Foster's Home is one of my favorite cartoons of all time. With its unique concept, its vast array of interesting characters, its heavy thematic focus on friendship and family, and its subtle use of episodic continuity.
What? That's not free!
It certainly is, little buddy. The pager is free when you sign up for service.
Ow! Rip-off artist! 300? What do you take me for?
Take you for? Okay, deal. 400.
Rip-off artist?
No, not again.
Oh man, that never gets old. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Comic Knight Zero, and today I'll be taking a look at one of my favorite episodes of Foster's Home. In this video, we'll be taking a look at Season 2, Episode 6, Frankie, My Dear, which aired on March 18th, 2005. Here I'll be giving a retrospective look on what I enjoyed about it when it aired back then, and what I can appreciate about it now. I'll be doing my best not to spoil or ruin any jokes in case you'd like to rewatch this episode for yourself. I'll more or less be giving a high-level overview of what's going on, what the episode does well, or how it could improve. And just as a reminder, if you enjoy the video, don't forget to leave a like as it lets me and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content. And if you want to see more videos like this, then be sure to smash that subscribe button. Just be sure to get consent before you do. And so, without further ado, let's get into it. We open in on Frankie and Mac filing paperwork. Frankie is explaining to her friends that she's stuck doing chores and can't join them on a night out because of Mr. Harriman, which, if you've seen this show, you know he tends to keep Frankie extremely busy. Mac, being the nice kid that he is, offers to cover for her.
Oh, Mac, you're the best! Why can't more men be like you?
And thus, Mac's crush on Frankie begins. Which, I think his crush here feels really organic, partly because this is the first time someone besides his mom has kissed him. Granted, it's on the cheek, but I think the emotional influence is still there. While the crush doesn't necessarily change the interactions between Mac and Frankie beyond this episode, Mac's romantic feelings for her does reappear, or at least gets referenced in episodes like Ticket to Ride and Bad Dare Day. And I'd like to add, this crush feels more natural compared to crushes I've seen in other cartoons. I'm looking at you, Darwin. Moving on from there, while Mac begins filing papers, Blue finds him lost in a haze. Mac begins going on about how great Frankie is, while Blue instead offers his criticisms about her. Oh, Blue, you always had such a way with words. While the two are talking, we catch a glimpse of Frankie on her way out.
What do you think? Aw, you guys are sweet.
And with that, Blue starts crushing on Frankie too.
Oh, she's so awesome.
And hot!
She's so nice.
And hot!
She's so cool.
And hot!
I like this little back and forth here because depending on who you are, one of these thoughts may be relatable to you. We see that Mac is in love with Frankie mostly due to her personality, while Blue is in love with her due to her looks. While Mac's crush carries over to future episodes, Blue's crush basically becomes non-existent after this whole thing is over. Reason being, he fell in love with Frankie because he saw her wearing a different look than what he would have seen otherwise. Which, as I mentioned before, is due to her being too busy to actually go out for a night, so I think this kind of makes sense in that regard. Before she leaves, Frankie blows a kiss that was meant for Mac, but is actually stolen by Blue, and so the two end up fighting. We transition to the next day, where we see Mac is a little upset with Blue, but that quickly washes away once he runs into Frankie, who seems unusually happy about last night. Soon, Frankie tells Mac that she met the man of her dreams last night, which immediately makes Mac assume that she was talking about him, thus continuing this false romance based off of a misunderstanding, which we soon see has also rubbed off on Blue, who thought Frankie was talking about him. And so it's at this point I think it becomes clear for how this plot will keep escalating purely off the idea of misunderstandings alone. While talking to Mac, Blue starts taking on a more mature persona, acting a little big-headed about the situation, though Blue tends to inflate his own ego from time to time, so this kind of behavior is certainly up his alley, which admittedly is something I've always enjoyed about Blue's character. I'm generally not a fan of egotistical characters, but I think Blue was the perfect character to be written with this personality trait, because it's done in a way that I could actually get behind. Because while he is a narcissist, I never actually hated him, as he's usually written this way for comedic effect as opposed to being purely antagonistic. If he ever does something that's really out of line or immoral, the story is generally written to ensure that he gets punished for it or learns his lesson. A lot of that may be contributed to the storytelling aspect of the show, but it still allows you to enjoy his character, even when he's a bit arrogant. Though in the context of this episode, Blue doesn't actually do anything wrong. His arrogance just adds more quote-unquote competition for Frankie's affection. But it doesn't take long before they realize that the man of Frankie's dreams was neither of them.
Yay, he's here. He's here.
He?
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I don't have time to cook tonight.
Blinded by jealousy and more misunderstandings, Blue and Mac think Frankie is in love with a pizza delivery boy. Which makes sense since they both have childlike minds and, well, children like to let their imaginations run wild, which, is the idea of the show. But I mean, look at him. He's got a car, money, and facial hair. Who can beat that? With this obstacle in their way, the two decide to join forces to get rid of this guy, which more or less involved bombarding him with paper balls, all of which came from the papers Mac filed from last night actually, which I thought was a pretty nice touch. Regardless of their efforts to get rid of this dude, they inadvertently caused him to think that Frankie was actually in love with him, which in turn made him fall in love with her. Yes, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. With the two adding more to their competition, they soon find themselves hard-pressed to stop him, which then leads to more squabbling. But it doesn't take long for them to meet their next competitor.
Hang on a second, Will. I've been waiting for this guy to show up all day.
This guy?
Enter Prince Charming, an imaginary friend created by a little girl to be her, well, Prince Charming, who's now being put up for adoption. I don't know why I made an intro for this guy. There's not much to say about him except he's the Prince Charming stereotype. However, despite his good looks and inspiring one-liners, Frankie immediately states she's gotten over guys like him since he was 5. But that didn't stop him from falling in love with her beauty. With this Chad entering the mix, the three simps decide to join forces and soon their squabble begins. But, no matter how determined they were to win this rivalry, none of them were prepared to face their true enemy.
Oh no, he's early!
He?
Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous! How do I look? Okay, good. Oh, Dylan, you're early.
I brought you these.
Oh, you shouldn't have. I'll just go put these in some water. This is the guy I was talking about.
With that, Frankie and her date head off to dinner, leaving the other four in shock. With the realization of who their true enemy is, the four decide to join forces, and before long, they all make their way to the same restaurant as Frankie. Now, if there's anything I remember about this episode, it's definitely the whole restaurant scene. Not because it's the climax of the episode, but also because the scene is just packed with jokes and gags that make the interactions in the scene just so memorable. Regardless of how doomed it was to fail, the group's plan was to infiltrate the restaurant in disguise and essentially crash Frankie's date by pretending to be her ex-boyfriend. For their disguise, they chose to go with the three guys in a trench coat idea, with the pizza guy as the legs, Mac as the arms, and Blue as the head, all going under the fake name Orlando Blue, which is just 10 out of 10. This whole idea was just something I found to be both clever and hilarious. Clever because to the general public, none of these three would have a reason to be in this restaurant by themselves, and hilarious due to how much communication is required for the three to perform just like regular tasks as a normal person would, such as opening a door or picking up a fork. And the need for communication is easily highlighted the moment these three walk through the door, essentially foreshadowing the hijinks that are yet to come. However, let's not forget, these three aren't the only ones that are in disguise.
Milady? Milady?
Will you get in here?
I hate you.
Moving on from there, while shenanigans goes on in the background, we somewhat focus in on the conversation between Frankie and Dylan, where Dylan here is more or less asking what all Frankie does at the foster home. And it's at this moment we see that Frankie is actually a little embarrassed about talking about her job, or at least talking about it amongst her peers or those in her general age group. It really gives perspective on how Frankie sees her job. While most imaginary friends are generally appreciative of what Frankie does, we can see that to some degree she hates and or is embarrassed by her work, making me wonder what kind of career Frankie aspires to pursue one day. During this dialogue, it's mentioned that she graduated with a degree in a difficult major, without specifically telling us what the major is, but it becomes clear to us that Frankie unfortunately never got the opportunity to actually use her degree. I know it's a short conversation in the grand scheme of things, but I still think it says a lot. Regardless, before the conversation continues any further, the four lovebirds finally make it to Dylan and Frankie's table, thus beginning their plan to crash their date. Here they begin engaging in further shenanigans, followed by a few lies, all of which are made for great comedy. While they think their plan is going perfectly, both Dylan and Frankie clearly see what's going on here. To initiate the final part of their plan, Blue gives Prince Charming the cue to go distract Frankie. The three try putting on a tough guy act, but fail their intimidation check, causing Dylan to get a little aggressive himself.
You thought you could muscle in on my territory, huh? Well, I didn't spend all night playing Mr. Nice Guy just to have a bunch of losers show up trying to steal my property.
Property?
Frankie is not your property.
Yeah, we saw her first, so she's our property.
Look guys, he means well. Continuing from there, Dylan continues showing more and more of his true colors, making everyone aware of how misogynistic he is and that he's only after Frankie because, well, he just thinks she's hot. Before he threatened to kick their butts, we find that Frankie was standing behind him witnessing the whole exchange.
No, really, I was just palling around with the kids over here. Cute little guys.
You mean my friends?
Oh, those were your, friends. Hey, Frankie, did I mention how awesome you look in that dress?
We soon cut back to the foster home, with the group raving about how hard Frankie kicked Dylan's butt. They apologize for ruining her date, and then all four of them hit on her for one last time. And that was Frankie, My Dear. Like I've said before, this is one of my favorite episodes of the show. I think what makes me like it so much is just how well the plot is able to carry itself, all of the use of misunderstandings, which sort of escalates the situation each time Mac and Blue misinterpret something. And when you look at other shows, you'll certainly see that there's different ways you can use the idea of misunderstandings to write a plot. In the episode The Plan from The Amazing World of Gumball, Gumball and his siblings think that some guy named Daniel Leonard is giving their mom perfume as an attempt to steal her away from them. And so the rest of the episode is about them creating the perfect plan to get this guy to leave their family alone. The misunderstanding in this episode is only used to start the plot as opposed to being used for comedy, mostly because when the kids found the perfume that Daniel Leonard sent, it wasn't revealed to be a misunderstanding until the end of the episode, where they actually find out that Daniel Leonard is actually the name of a fragrance company. So their misinterpretation is used for plot advancement instead of an immediate gag. But even then, misunderstandings can still be used purely as a joke if you'd want them to. You'll find common examples of this in a show like The Fairly OddParents, where Cosmo will sometimes misinterpret something another character says, which, if he's granting a wish, can lead to an unwanted result. And so, when written in this matter, misunderstandings can be used as jokes, and usually for a quick gag by a dumb character. But the way this Foster's episode uses this idea, almost each misunderstanding comes off as both a joke and a way to advance the plot, often leading into a funny gag or providing a false perspective, even if we as the audience know it isn't true. Like, Frankie is 22, and all these lovebirds are out of her age range, meaning the possibility of her wanting to date any of these guys is extremely unlikely, which puts all four of them in a search for a love that they'll never necessarily attain. However, by the end of this, it does have a bigger effect on Mac more than anyone, as, like I've mentioned before, Mac does end up having a permanent crush on Frankie after this episode, which occasionally pops up later in the series. So it's at this point the show now has a protagonist who's in love with someone out of their reach. But obviously, this idea isn't anything new. We've seen this trope done time and time again. We've seen it with Dipper and Wendy, Gordon and Kimberly, Buttercup and Ace, the list goes on. But compared to those listed examples, Mac's affection for Frankie never makes him throw his friends under the bus or put his friends in danger, similar to what you see Mordecai do on occasion, all for his pursuit to date someone, often putting the love interest he isn't dating above his friends, otherwise known as simping, as the cool kids call it. But even when Mac's affection causes him to go against someone like Blue, it's generally because whatever idea Blue wanted to partake in was already a bad idea to begin with, and so it would have been in Mac's best interest to kind of pursue his crush regardless of that. So I think this introduced relationship allows you to add more continuity for a character without it coming out of nowhere, as we've seen with Darwin from The Amazing World of Gumball. Nor does it make us hate the character for their actions in pursuit of a crush, which many might have hated Mordecai for doing, and understandably so. Another thing I really love about this episode is the lesson it was trying to teach. Now, I don't fault a show with this age rating for not teaching morals, mostly because I think the main goal of a show on a network like this is generally just to provide entertainment. Like, I don't know about you, but I didn't necessarily watch a show like Billy and Mandy because I thought it taught great life lessons. Now, whether or not you think most episodes of Foster's Home teaches any morals is up to you to decide. But I do think this episode in particular serves as a great example, mostly trying to advocate against the objectification of women. We see Dylan wants to treat Frankie as some prize that he deserves to have, which, to a degree, is also the same mindset Mac and the others had until they realized it was wrong of them to think that way after seeing this behavior within Dylan. And so it was then that Mac and the others understood that Frankie's independent and is free to romantically pursue whoever she wants, not serve as a trophy to some entitled jerk. Which I think is an excellent message to send out to viewers. I think a negative aspect of this whole plot was Blue and Prince Charming's interest in Frankie being purely based off of her appearance, which makes the two look pretty shallow. Now, while their shallowness doesn't help the positive message I pointed out earlier, it certainly does go to show that you can't earn someone's affection if their appearance is the only thing you're after. Granted, the two were written this way to quickly involve them in the plot, but my point still stands. And I'm not sure why, but even though this episode aired in March of 2005, I always considered it to be a Valentine's episode. I think that's mostly due to how heavily the plot focused on the concept of love and infatuations. And the interesting thing is, it feels like a V-Day episode without the appearance of being a V-Day holiday special. And what I mean by that is, a show like Ed, Edd n Eddy had a V-Day special called Hanky Panky Hullabaloo. Since this was a holiday special, it would be in the show's favor to only air roughly around February, around the time the holiday it's based on, otherwise it would just kind of feel out of place. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not looking to watch a Halloween special in the middle of May. I'm just not in the spirit for it around that time of year. And so, since this Foster's episode isn't necessarily viewed as a Valentine's Day special, it isn't constricted to a time frame in which many consider to be the best time to watch it. You could just watch this episode in the middle of a month like November without it feeling out of place. You can treat this like any normal episode without needing to be in a holiday mood. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Anyway, if you enjoyed the show, what were some of your favorite episodes? Did you enjoy this episode as much as I did? Or do you plan on giving it another look now? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I always love hearing from you peeps. As always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like as it lets me and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content. And if you want to see more videos like this, then make sure you smash that subscribe button. Just be sure to get consent before you do. I hope you're all doing well, and with that, I shall see you all next time.